"Daddy, please help her," Lily screamed, pointing across the parking lot. Ethan turned, heart pounding, as two men shoved a woman into a dark SUV. "Daddy, please help her. Before we dive into this story, I need to know something. What would you do if your child begged you to step in, when danger was right in front of you? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever believed a single act of courage could change a life, hit subscribe. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The sound of an alarm clock filled the small kitchen of a rented two-bedroom house in a quiet Missouri suburb. Ethan Cole wiped his hands on a towel and called down the hallway, "Lily, let's go, honey. We're late again." A few seconds later, an 8-year-old girl with tangled blonde hair came running in, wearing mismatched socks and holding a pink lunchbox. "I couldn't find my shoes," she said breathlessly. Ethan smiled, kneeling down to help her tie her sneakers. "Well, next time we'll find them before breakfast, deal?" She nodded, grinning. "Deal." The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and toasted bagels. A drawing of Ethan and Lily, stick figures holding hands, was pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a heart. It was a simple life. Quiet, predictable. And that's exactly how Ethan liked it. By 8:15, they were in the truck, driving down a 2-lane road lined with bare trees and frosted grass. Country radio hummed softly in the background, filling the silence with something familiar. Ethan worked at a local hardware store. Steady hours, modest pay, but enough to keep the lights on. Every day looked the same. School drop-off, work, pickup, dinner, bedtime. Routine. Safe. But safety, he'd learned, didn't last forever. Later that day, he was stacking boxes at the store when his coworker, Ben, looked over. "You heading to the festival tonight?" Ethan shook his head. "Probably not. Gotta work late." Ben grinned. "You always say that, man. Lily deserves some fun." Ethan hesitated. Maybe Ben was right. The town's fall festival only came once a year. Music, food trucks, pumpkin carving contests. Small-town magic at its best. That night, after dinner, Lily looked at him with those big blue eyes. "Daddy, can we please go? Just for a little?" Ethan sighed but smiled. "All right, pumpkin. Let's go." The town square glowed under strings of yellow lights. People laughed. The smell of kettle corn filled the air, and Lily twirled in her denim jacket, face painted with a butterfly. Ethan bought her a caramel apple, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. But then something shifted. Across the street, near the parking lot, two men stood by a dark SUV, arguing quietly. A woman was between them. Tall, in business clothes, her hair messy, fear flickering in her eyes. Lily noticed first. She tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, what's happening over there?" Ethan looked. The woman said something, shook her head. One of the men grabbed her arm roughly. "Daddy, please help her." Those 4 words hit him like a punch to the chest. For a split second, time stopped. Ethan's instincts screamed to stay out of it. He was a single dad, not a hero. He had Lily to protect. But then the woman cried out, just once, and everything inside him changed. He turned to his daughter. "Stay here. Daddy." "I'll be right back, Lily. Don't move." He walked across the parking lot fast, heart hammering. His boots crunched against gravel. "Hey!" he shouted. "Let her go." The 2 men froze. One of them sneered. "Mind your business, pal." Ethan took another step forward. "I said, let her go." The taller man released her arm, but only to shove Ethan hard in the chest. He stumbled but didn't fall. Years of quiet restraint snapped in that moment, like a rope pulled too tight for too long. He didn't think. He just moved. Later, the police would say it was self-defense. The woman was unharmed. The 2 men were taken away in cuffs. But that night, standing under the orange glow of the festival lights, Ethan didn't feel like a hero. He felt exposed. People whispered as they walked past. Some thanked him. Others looked at him like he'd brought trouble into their safe little town. The woman, Rachel Hayes, she'd introduced herself between shaky breaths, thanked him quietly, eyes lingering a little longer than expected. Then she disappeared into the night. Ethan didn't think much more about it. He just wanted to get Lily home. At bedtime, Lily couldn't sleep. She crawled into her father's arms and whispered, "You were so brave, Daddy." Ethan smiled faintly. "I just did what anyone would do." She looked up at him, wide-eyed. "No, you didn't. Nobody else moved." That stayed with him long after she fell asleep. The next morning, Ethan dropped Lily off at school, still thinking about what had happened. But when he got to the hardware store, something strange was waiting for him. A black sedan sat in the parking lot. The driver wore a suit. When Ethan walked past, the man stepped out and said, "Mr. Cole, someone would like to speak with you." Ethan frowned. "Who?" The man handed him a business card. The name printed in bold letters made his stomach tighten. Rachel Hayes, CEO, Hayes Industries. He thought last night was over. But that knock on his door, it was only the beginning. Ethan stood outside the hardware store, staring at the business card in his hand. The letters shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Rachel Hayes, CEO, Hayes Industries. He turned the card over, half expecting a mistake. The woman from last night, the one his daughter had begged him to help, was a CEO of that Hayes Industries. The driver cleared his throat softly. "She asked me to bring you to her, if you're available." Ethan hesitated. He had an afternoon shift, shelves to restock, calls to make. But something in the man's tone made him realize this wasn't a casual request. He took a slow breath. "Give me 5 minutes." 10 minutes later, Ethan was in the back seat of the black sedan, his work jacket folded neatly in his lap. The town blurred by diners, gas stations, the familiar rhythm of a small Missouri life slowly giving way to something he didn't understand. They pulled into the parking lot of a small cafe on Main Street, the kind of place where people came for biscuits and black coffee, not business meetings. Inside, Rachel Hayes sat at a corner table by the window. Her dark hair was tied back, and she looked calmer than she had the night before, though her eyes still carried that sharp, searching intensity. "Mr. Cole," she said, standing as he approached. "I wasn't sure you'd come." He nodded politely. "You didn't give me much of a choice." A small smile flickered across her face. "Fair enough. Please sit." They ordered coffee. The silence between them felt heavy but not uncomfortable. More like two people circling something they both didn't want to say. "I didn't get the chance to thank you properly last night," Rachel began, her voice measured. "If you hadn't stepped in," she trailed off, "things would have ended badly." "I just did what anyone would have done," Ethan said. Rachel shook her head gently. "No, you did what no one else did." He looked down at his coffee. Compliments made him uneasy. "So," he said after a pause, "who were those men?" Rachel's eyes flickered with hesitation. "Business associates. Former, actually. They thought they could use certain information against me." Ethan frowned. "That's not exactly a small thing." "No," she admitted. "It isn't." She studied him for a long moment, then said quietly, "You were military, weren't you?" Ethan froze. "How would you know that?" "The way you moved," she said simply. "Efficient, controlled. That doesn't come from working retail." He didn't answer. He didn't like talking about the past. Not the uniform, not the deployments, not the empty side of the bed that still haunted him every night. Rachel leaned forward. "I did some checking this morning. I know you left the service after your wife passed. I know you've been raising your daughter on your own. And I know you've been trying to stay out of trouble." He clenched his jaw. "You looked into me?" She met his gaze without apology. When someone saves your life, you want to know who they are. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, cars rolled past, and a small-town rhythm carried on as if nothing unusual was happening. Then Rachel said something that made Ethan's stomach twist. "I think those men weren't acting alone. And I think they might come looking for you." Ethan stared at her. "You mean us?" "My daughter." Rachel nodded. "That's why I wanted to see you. I can make sure you're protected." He shook his head slowly. "You don't need to worry about me. I can handle myself." Her expression softened. "I'm sure you can. But can you handle protecting Lily alone? That stopped him cold. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside is my card and a number that rings straight to me. If you see anything strange, call. Ethan didn't move to take it. Why would someone like you care what happens to me? Rachel hesitated before answering. Because I owe you more than you realize. And with that, she stood, leaving her coffee half-finished. Be careful, Mr. Cole. The bell over the cafe door jingled as she walked out. Ethan sat there for a long moment, watching her car disappear down the street. Then he picked up the envelope. Inside, along with the business card, was a photograph, an old one faded at the edges. It showed Rachel standing beside a man in uniform, the same kind Ethan once wore, the same unit patch on his shoulder. That night, Ethan tucked Lily into bed as the rain tapped gently against the window. "Daddy?" she murmured sleepily. "That lady from the fair. Is she okay?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, sweetheart. She's fine." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." But as he stood there in the dark, watching his daughter drift off, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't fine. Something about that photo, about Rachel's voice, about the way she'd said be careful. It all settled into his chest like a weight that wouldn't lift. The next morning, as he walked Lily to the truck, he noticed a dark SUV parked across the street. Same color, same tinted windows as the one from the night of the festival. It didn't move. He placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, forcing a smile. "Hop in, kiddo." She grinned, buckled up, and started humming softly as he drove away. Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror. The SUV was still there. Later that day, while closing up the hardware store, he saw a familiar figure standing by the register. Rachel Hayes. This time, she wasn't in business clothes. She wore jeans and a baseball cap, but she still carried herself like someone who never let her guard down. "Didn't expect to see you here," Ethan said carefully. "I didn't expect to be," she replied. "But I need to ask you something." He crossed his arms. "What's that? Have you noticed anyone following you?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded once. "Yeah, black SUV. Parked near my house this morning." Rachel's expression hardened. "Then they've already started." "Who's they, Rachel?" She glanced around, lowering her voice. "The men from last night weren't random. They were hired. And I think the people behind them want to find something I have." "And they think I have it?" She looked at him, guilt flickering in her eyes. "You helped me, Ethan. That put a target on your back." Ethan exhaled slowly, staring out the window at the fading sunset. He thought of Lily, of her laughter, her drawings, the way she always said, "Daddy, you're my hero," before bed. And for the first time since the war, fear crept into his heart. Not for himself, for her. But neither of them knew this was only the beginning. Sometimes, protecting the ones you love means walking into danger you didn't ask for. If you've ever had to stand up for someone when it scared you most, you know what's coming next. Stay with this story. The next few days felt almost normal. Ethan worked his shifts, helped customers find nails and paintbrushes, and smiled when Lily came running out of school with her backpack bouncing behind her. But even normal felt strange now. Every time he looked over his shoulder, he half expected to see that dark SUV again. Every time a car slowed on their street, he felt his chest tighten. Still, he told himself it was fine. He'd overreacted before. Maybe it was just his nerves. He'd been through worse. On Friday afternoon, he stood in the backyard fixing the latch on the fence while Lily chased their golden retriever, Max, through the grass. The air smelled like cut wood and rain. "Daddy, look!" she shouted, holding up a wildflower she'd picked. "It's for you." He smiled. "Thanks, sweetheart. That's beautiful." For a moment, all the noise inside him quieted. The way the sunlight hit her hair, the laughter echoing across the yard. It reminded him why he kept going. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement near the tree line. A shadow, quick, subtle, gone before he could be sure it was there. He froze, his hand tightening around the wrench. "Max! Inside!" he called, voice sharp. The dog barked once but obeyed. Lily frowned. "What's wrong, Daddy?" He forced a smile. Nothing, pumpkin. Just saw a raccoon. She giggled, unconvinced but happy to believe him. As she ran toward the porch, Ethan's eyes drifted back toward the woods. The wind rustled the leaves, but nothing moved. He exhaled slowly, telling himself it was nothing, just nerves. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope Rachel had left. He hadn't touched it since their meeting. Inside was her card and that photo of the soldier in her past. He turned it over again, studying the man's face. It was faint, but he recognized something, the same patch, the same division. People from that world didn't just vanish. They left trails. He should have called her. But calling meant admitting something was wrong. And admitting something was wrong meant putting Lily in the middle of it. He couldn't do that. Not again. The next morning, he dropped Lily at school and stopped by the diner for coffee. "Morning, Ethan." The waitress, Joe, said with a warm smile. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," he said, forcing a grin. Joe poured his coffee and leaned in slightly. "You know, I heard something about that lady from the festival. The one you helped." He froze. "What about her?" "Word is, she's connected to some big company scandal up in New York. Folks say she's been in trouble before." Ethan's heart thudded. "You shouldn't believe everything you hear." Joe shrugged. "Maybe not. But trouble has a way of finding people." He left a few minutes later, the coffee untouched. As he got into his truck, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello." Familiar voice, low, calm. "Rachel." "Ethan, you haven't called me." "I told you I'm fine." "Are you?" she asked. "Because I don't think you are." He looked around the parking lot. No one. No SUV. "You don't know me, Rachel." Her tone softened. "You're right. But I know people who act like everything's okay when it's not. I used to be one of them." Ethan clenched his jaw. "You think I can't handle this?" "I think you're trying to protect your daughter. But pretending nothing's wrong won't make it go away." He didn't answer. "Just be careful," she said quietly. "Please." The line clicked dead. That night, Lily climbed onto the couch beside him with a blanket. "Can we watch a movie, Daddy?" He smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Sure thing, pumpkin. You pick." She chose an old Disney movie, one they'd seen 100 times. Halfway through, she fell asleep against his arm, her small hand clutching his sleeve. Ethan muted the TV and sat there, staring at her. He'd lost too much already, his wife, his peace, his sense of safety. He wouldn't lose Lily too. Whatever this was, whatever Rachel had dragged him into, he'd find a way out. He had to. The next morning came with gray skies and steady rain. Ethan grabbed his coat and opened the front door, and stopped cold. A small envelope sat on the porch. No name, no return address. He bent down, picked it up, and opened it. Inside was a single photo. Lily, the school, smiling, taken from across the street. Ethan's throat went dry. He scanned the street, but it was empty. Just wet pavement and the sound of distant thunder. His hands shook as he locked the door behind him. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, he sat at the kitchen table again. This time, the envelope Rachel gave him wasn't just sitting there. It was open. He pulled out her card, stared at the number, and finally reached for his phone. He didn't want to drag anyone else into this. But if they'd crossed the line to his daughter, that changed everything. He punched in the number. It rang twice before she answered. "Rachel Hayes." "It's Ethan," he said, his voice tight. "We need to talk." A beat of silence. "I'll be there in an hour," she said. As he hung up, he looked toward Lily's room. She was safe. For now. He sat there in the dim kitchen, jaw clenched, hands still trembling. The rain outside grew louder, harder, washing against the windows like a warning. He didn't know what was coming. Only that pretending nothing was wrong was no longer an option. And this time, he wouldn't wait for trouble to come to him. Pride is a liar. And his was about to cost him everything. The sound of rain followed Rachel's car up the long gravel drive to Ethan's house. Headlights cut through the mist. She parked, grabbed her coat, and stepped out into the downpour. By the time Ethan opened the door, she was soaked. "Sorry," she said, brushing wet hair from her face. "I didn't want to wait till morning." Ethan stepped aside. "Come in." The house was warm, simple but homey. The smell of coffee filled the air. Lily's drawings were taped on the walls. One of them labeled me and Daddy and Max. Rachel noticed them as she hung up her coat. "She's talented," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "She's the best thing I ever did right." He poured her a cup of coffee and handed it over. "You said they've started. What does that mean, Rachel?" She took a sip, setting the cup down with steady hands. "It means they're not done. Those men, they weren't just after me. They were after something I was supposed to hand over, files, data, proof of fraud inside my company. I wouldn't give it to them. And now, because you stepped in, they think you might have it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I don't. And even if I did, they're not getting near my daughter." Rachel met his eyes. "That's why I'm here." Lily's soft footsteps interrupted them. She stood at the hallway door in her pajamas, clutching her blanket. "Daddy?" she mumbled sleepily. "Who's here?" Ethan crouched beside her. "It's okay, sweetheart. This is Miss Rachel. She's a friend." Rachel knelt too, offering a gentle smile. "Hey there, Lily. Sorry for waking you." The little girl blinked up at her. "You're the lady from the fair." "That's right." Lily tilted her head. "Are you okay now?" Rachel's eyes softened. "Thanks to your dad, yeah. I am." Lily smiled, satisfied. "Good." Ethan brushed her hair back. "Go back to bed, pumpkin. Everything's fine." "Okay," she whispered, hugging him before heading down the hall. Rachel watched the moment quietly. When Lily's door shut, she turned back. "She's brave. Reminds me of someone." Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "She's tougher than she looks." "So are you," Rachel said quietly. An uneasy silence hung between them for a moment. Then Ethan spoke. "You can stay here tonight. Safer than a motel." Rachel hesitated. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "You helped start this. You should be here if it comes to us." She accepted, though the guilt in her eyes said she hated being the reason he was in danger. Ethan pointed to the guest room down the hall. "You can take that room. Lock it from the inside. I'll keep watch in the living room." Rachel started to argue, then saw the determination in his face. "All right," she said softly. "But you should rest too." He shook his head. "I'll rest when she's safe." Hours passed in silence. The storm outside had calmed, but Ethan stayed awake, sitting in the armchair by the window, watching the shadows shift across the yard. The clock read 2:47 a.m. when Rachel stepped out of the guest room. "You're still up?" she whispered. He looked over. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded, wrapping her sweater tighter. "Neither could I." She sat across from him, the quiet between them filled only by the faint hum of rain gutters outside. "You don't talk about it much," she said after a while. "The military. Your wife. What happened?" Ethan stared out the window. "Not much to say." Rachel waited. "You lost her." He nodded. "Car accident. 3 years ago." She didn't speak, didn't offer pity. Just listened. "I tried to stay busy," he went on. "Took the first job I could find. Kept my head down. I figured if I didn't look back, maybe it'd stop hurting." Rachel's voice was soft. "Has it?" He shook his head slowly. "No. You just get used to carrying it." She nodded, her expression distant. "I understand that more than you think." A branch scratched against the window, startling them both. Ethan stood immediately, moving to check the curtains. Nothing but darkness outside. He turned back, lowering his voice. "You should get some rest." Rachel hesitated. "I can help, Ethan. I know people. If I can prove what those men were after, maybe we can stop this before it gets worse." He sighed. "You think I trust anyone from that world? The same world that sent them here?" Her tone was firm. "You don't have to trust them. Just trust me." Their eyes locked for a moment. Steady, unsure, but real. He exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. "We'll talk in the morning." The The first light of dawn slipped through the curtains, painting the room gold. Ethan finally drifted off on the couch, the weight of exhaustion pulling him under. When he woke, Rachel was already in the kitchen, making coffee. "Morning," she said softly. "You snore, by the way." He groaned. "Don't tell Lily that. She'll never let me live it down." She laughed, a small sound, but genuine. For a brief moment, the house felt almost normal again. Two adults sharing quiet conversation while the smell of breakfast filled the air. Then Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. A new text. No name attached. "You should have stayed out of it." The warmth in the room vanished. Rachel saw his face change. "What is it?" He handed her the phone. She read the message, jaw tightening. "They're watching us," she whispered. Ethan looked out the window toward the road, his pulse rising. For a moment he said nothing. Then, his voice steady but low, he said, "If they're watching, then they already know where to find us." He turned to Rachel, his tone quiet but firm. "You said you had proof. If that's true, we need to end this now." Rachel hesitated, then nodded slowly. "There's a drive, hidden in my office back in the city. It's everything they're after." "Then we get it," Ethan said. "You can't just walk into my building, Ethan. They'll be waiting." He met her eyes. "You said to trust you. I'm saying trust me." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rachel finally said, "Okay, we'll go tomorrow." That night, as Ethan checked the locks one last time, he paused by Lily's bedroom door. She was fast asleep, her stuffed bear tucked under her arm. He whispered softly, "It's okay, Pumpkin. Daddy's got you." Rachel stood quietly in the hallway behind him, watching the way he looked at his daughter, with a love fierce enough to face anything. She finally understood why he fought so hard to keep their world small, safe, quiet. Because when you've already lost once, even silence feels like peace. And peace was something neither of them could afford anymore. She saw it then, the fracture in his armor, and it terrified her. Have you ever been stuck with someone who made you feel too much? Tell me what happened. I'd really like to hear your story. The next morning came with heavy skies and restless air, the kind that warned of rain before it started. Ethan packed a small duffel, flashlight, water bottle, old Marine ID, muscle memory more than habit. Rachel stood by the doorway, watching him move with quiet focus. "You still pack like a soldier," she said. He zipped the bag. "You still sound like someone running from something." She didn't argue. "We both know I am." Lily ran into the room, holding her favorite stuffed bear. "Daddy, are we going somewhere?" Ethan crouched, brushing her hair back. "Not today, sweetheart. Miss Rachel and I just have to take care of something." Lily frowned. "Promise you'll be careful?" "I promise." Rachel watched the exchange, her chest tightening. She remembered a promise like that, one that hadn't been kept. By noon, they were on the highway heading toward the city. Fields turned into strip malls, then glass towers. The world grew louder, harder. Ethan's jaw stayed tight the whole drive. Rachel broke the silence first. "I didn't lie to you about the files. But I didn't tell you everything either." He glanced at her. "I figured. I wasn't just a data analyst. I was an internal investigator. I found something inside the company, money laundering, offshore accounts, connections to private contractors. When I tried to expose it, they came after me." Ethan stayed quiet. "I didn't go to the police because the company owns too many of them. So I disappeared. Until that day at the fair." Ethan gripped the wheel tighter. "So what you're saying is, they'll never stop." "Not until someone stops them." They parked behind an old warehouse 2 blocks from her office building. The street was quiet, too quiet. Rachel pointed toward a narrow alley. "There's a service entrance through the side. The drive's hidden in my desk drawer. Top floor, second door on the left." Ethan scanned the street. "You stay here. I'll get it." She shook her head. "You won't know what you're looking for. I'm coming." He didn't argue this time. They moved together, silent, precise. The air smelled like diesel and rain. Inside, the office was dark. Power off. Desks empty. Every footstep echoed. Rachel's pulse quickened as they reached her office. She slid the drawer open and pulled out a small black flash drive. Got it. But before she could speak again, a voice behind them said, You really should have stayed gone, Rachel. They froze. Two men stood in the doorway, the same ones from the fair. Ethan stepped forward instinctively, positioning himself between Rachel and the men. You don't want to do this. The taller one smirked. You again? You've got bad luck, soldier. Ethan's stance shifted, steady, calm, lethal in its simplicity. No, you picked the wrong family. The fight broke fast. A swing, a block, the sound of impact against metal filing cabinets. Ethan moved with precision, trained, silent, effective. One of the men lunged, and Ethan dropped him with a single blow. The second reached for Rachel, but she grabbed a stapler and slammed it into his wrist. He yelped, stumbling back just long enough for Ethan to shove him against the wall. Rachel grabbed the drive and backed away. We have to go. Ethan didn't argue. They ran. Down the stairs, through the alley, out into the pounding rain. Tires screeched somewhere behind them, but Ethan's truck wasn't far. He shoved the key in, started the engine, and peeled out onto the road. Only when the city skyline faded behind them did either of them breathe again. They pulled over at a rest stop off the interstate. Rain still poured, washing the dirt and fear from their faces. Rachel sat in silence, staring at the drive in her hand. Everything I've done, I thought it was for justice. But now I've dragged you and Lily into this. Ethan leaned back against the seat, breathing hard. You didn't drag us in. I chose this. She looked at him, eyes full of guilt. You could have walked away. You should have. He shook his head. That's not how I'm built. The air between them went quiet. The kind of quiet that holds too much truth. Rachel finally whispered, You're not angry? He thought for a moment before answering. I'm angry that my little girl had to see things she shouldn't. But not at you. Her lip trembled slightly. I've lost people before. Good people. I don't want to lose anyone else because of me. Ethan's voice softened. You're not losing anyone tonight. She turned away, blinking fast. You don't understand. They'll come again. They won't stop until they erase everything. The files, me, anyone who helped. Ethan's tone stayed calm but firm. Then we don't hide. We fight. Rachel stared at him. You'd risk your life for this? For what's right, he said. And for the people under my roof. That's all that matters. The windshield fogged as the rain softened. Rachel wiped a hand across the glass, watching headlights blur in the distance. You know, she said quietly, when I first saw you, I thought you were just another quiet man trying to survive. I didn't realize how much strength it takes to stay kind. Ethan looked at her. You'd be surprised how hard kindness can hit. They shared a small, knowing smile, the first in days. As the storm eased, Rachel plugged the flash drive into her laptop. The screen flickered to life. Rows of documents filled the display, wire transfers, coded accounts, private emails. It's all here, she said. Everything they've done. Ethan leaned closer. So now what? We leak it, she said. To someone they can't buy. You know anyone like that? She hesitated. Maybe. There's a journalist, an old friend. But reaching him will put us both in danger. Ethan nodded. Then we'll plan it right. Tomorrow. Rachel closed the laptop and leaned back. Exhaustion finally caught up to her. You ever think about how strange this is? Two strangers thrown together like this. Ethan gave a small shrug. Life's funny that way. Maybe it's not funny, she said quietly. Maybe it's fate. He didn't respond, but the look in his eyes said he wasn't sure if fate was something he still believed in. A long silence followed, not empty, but full. The hum of trucks passing by, the smell of wet asphalt, the soft tapping of rain on metal. Rachel finally whispered, Thank you. Ethan turned toward her. For what? For not giving up on me when you had every reason to. He gave a small, tired smile. Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. The lights of a passing semi flashed across their faces, brief, fleeting. But in that moment, something had shifted. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were preparing for a fight neither of them could avoid. And somewhere deep down, beneath fear and exhaustion, was something neither wanted to admit. Hope. The truth has a way of finding light, even when you've buried it in the dark. If this part of the story hit you, if you've ever tried to do the right thing and paid the price, you'll understand what's coming next. Stick around. You might just believe in second chances again. The next day began with sunlight, but it didn't feel like a new start. It felt like the calm before something heavy. Ethan and Rachel sat at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold between them. Lily colored quietly in the living room, humming to herself. Rachel broke the silence first. "I reached my contact," she said softly. "The journalist. His name's Daniel Pierce. He's willing to meet us tonight." Ethan nodded. "Where?" "An old diner off Route 41. He said it's quiet, out of sight." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Sounds too easy." Rachel sighed. "I know, but it's our only chance." The drive to the diner was quiet. Small-town America rolled past their windows. Weathered barns, fields of dry corn, the occasional faded billboard. When they arrived, the neon sign flickered weakly. Betsy's Diner. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few trucks. Inside, it smelled like coffee and fried eggs. Old country music played low on the radio. Rachel spotted Daniel at a corner booth. He looked older than she remembered. Gray in his beard, tired in his eyes. "Rachel," he said, standing to hug her. "It's been a long time." "Too long," she said. "This is Ethan." Daniel nodded politely. "You got it." Rachel slid the flash drive across the table. "Everything's on there." He picked it up, glancing at Ethan. "You trust her with this?" Ethan's tone was steady. "She saved my life. That's enough." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then maybe this time, the truth will finally matter." As they talked, Ethan's instincts prickled. Two men had just entered the diner, suits, too clean for a roadside stop. One sat at the counter. The other took a booth near the door. Ethan leaned toward Rachel, voice low. "We're not alone." She turned slightly, eyes following his. Her stomach dropped. "They found us." Daniel looked confused. "Who are they?" Ethan didn't answer. "We're leaving." He grabbed the flash drive from the table, motioning Rachel toward the back. Daniel started to protest, but Ethan shook his head. "Now." They slipped through the kitchen, past startled cooks, and out the rear exit. Outside, the air smelled like grease and rain-soaked pavement. "Ethan, wait!" Rachel hissed as they reached the truck. "We can't just." Her words were cut off by the sound of shattering glass. A bullet tore through the diner's front window. "Get down!" Ethan shouted, shoving her behind the truck. Sirens wailed somewhere far off, too far to matter now. Rachel's breath came fast. "We can't lead them home." "We won't," Ethan said. "We'll end it." They drove fast, cutting through side roads and back highways until they reached the edge of town. An abandoned barn Ethan used to store tools. He killed the engine, stepped out, and scanned the tree line. Nothing but quiet wind. Rachel followed him inside. "What's the plan?" Ethan turned, eyes cold but calm. "They'll come for the drive, so we give them something else to chase." She frowned. "You mean?" "I'll draw them out," he said. "You take Lily and go somewhere safe." "No," Rachel's voice shook, but her stance didn't. "You're not doing this alone. This isn't up for debate." "Yes, it is," she shot back. "You keep trying to protect everyone by walking into fire. But maybe that's not strength anymore. Maybe that's just guilt." Her words hit harder than she meant them to. Ethan looked away, jaw tight. "You don't know what it's like to lose someone because of your mistakes." Rachel stepped closer. "I know exactly what that's like." Silence. Just the sound of rain starting again, tapping on the old tin roof. Rachel's voice broke the quiet. "The man I was supposed to expose, he was my boss, my mentor. I looked up to him. When I started digging into his accounts, he sent people after me. One of them hurt someone I cared about." Ethan's expression softened slightly. "I've been running ever since," she continued, "trying to fix what I broke. So if you think you're the only one with ghosts, you're wrong. Ethan exhaled, finally meeting her eyes. Then we both stopped running. Headlights flashed outside, slow, deliberate. They're here, Ethan said, moving to the window. Rachel checked the drive in her hand. If they get this, they won't. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not the quiet single dad from a farm town, but the man who had been trained to protect at any cost. Be careful, she whispered. He nodded once. Always. The first SUV rolled into the yard. Then another. Men stepped out, black jackets, radios crackling. Ethan grabbed an old shotgun from behind the door, motioned for Rachel to stay low. The leader called out, "You can't run forever, Ethan. Hand it over and we'll let you walk away." Ethan stepped into the open doorway, rain pouring over his shoulders. "You're lying." The man smirked. "You've got guts. I'll give you that." Ethan's voice was calm. "You came after my daughter. That was your first mistake." Everything happened fast. Tires spun in mud. Shouts echoed. Ethan fired once, not to kill, just to scare, and ducked back inside. Rachel hit a switch on her laptop, sending the files to a secure address. "It's uploading," she said. 60 seconds. Ethan moved beside her, guarding the entrance. "That's long enough." Bullets ripped through the wooden walls. Splinters flew. Rachel flinched but kept her focus on the progress bar. "Almost done," she whispered. "Almost." A shot hit the computer, sparks flying. The screen went black. "No!" Rachel cried. Ethan pulled her down as another round hit the doorframe. "It's okay. We've still got the drive." But when he looked, it was gone, knocked from her hand in the chaos. They both froze, scanning the floor. The sound of boots outside grew louder. Rachel's eyes darted toward the corner. "There!" Ethan reached for the drive, but the door burst open, the leader stepping in with a gun raised. "End of the road," he said coldly. Rachel's pulse pounded in her ears. Ethan didn't move. The man stepped closer. "You should have stayed in your lane, soldier." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Maybe you should have picked someone else's family." Before the man could react, Rachel threw a metal wrench from the table. It hit his wrist, and the gun clattered to the floor. Ethan tackled him. The two men struggled, mud and rain mixing underfoot. Rachel grabbed the flash drive, running toward the truck. "Ethan!" she shouted. He broke free, sprinting after her. They jumped into the cab as gunfire echoed behind them. Ethan slammed the accelerator. The barn shrank in the rearview mirror, fire reflecting off the rain-soaked road. They drove until the city lights reappeared on the horizon. Only then did Rachel whisper, voice shaking, "What now?" Ethan's hands gripped the wheel. "Now we finish it." She looked at him, tired, bleeding, but unbroken. "You really think we can?" she asked. He gave a small, steady nod. "We don't have a choice. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's just the beginning of goodbye." Have you ever lost someone because you were too afraid to fight? Comment below. I want to hear how you found your way back. The road stretched quiet under the dark sky. Streetlights blurred past as Ethan drove with one hand on the wheel, the other gripping his side where a bullet had grazed him. Rachel glanced over, worry etched across her face. "You're bleeding." "I've had worse," he said. "That doesn't make it fine." He didn't respond. His focus stayed on the highway, eyes locked ahead. The silence between them was heavy, the kind that fills a car after too many unspoken truths. Finally, Rachel said softly, "You don't have to carry everything alone." Ethan gave a short laugh, more breath than humor. "You ever notice how everyone says that right before they walk away?" "I'm not walking away," she said. "Not yet," he muttered. They reached a motel just off Route 17, the kind with a flickering sign and chipped paint. Ethan parked and turned off the engine. Inside, the room smelled faintly of old coffee and bleach. Rachel helped him sit on the edge of the bed, grabbing a towel from the bathroom. "Hold still," she said, pressing it against his wound. He winced but didn't pull away. "You're good at this." She gave a small smile. "I used to patch up my brother's scrapes when we were kids. This isn't that different." Ethan's gaze softened. Your brother. Where is he now? Rachel paused. Gone. He didn't make it past my mess. Her voice broke on the last word. Ethan reached up, covering her hand with his. You couldn't have known. She shook her head. I should have known. That's the part that eats you alive. For a long time, neither spoke. The only sound was the hum of the old air conditioner and the soft rain outside. Ethan looked down at his hands. Rough, scarred, steady. You ever wonder if people like us are meant to have peace? Rachel met his eyes. I think peace isn't something you find. It's something you build, one small choice at a time. He let out a slow breath. And what if you keep breaking it? Then you start again. Her words lingered in the air, gentle, steady, unshakable. Ethan leaned back, eyes half closed. The pain in his side dulled, but something heavier settled in his chest. Guilt, fear, the kind he hadn't let himself feel in years. Rachel watched him quietly, then stood and went to the window. Outside, the motel parking lot glowed under yellow lights. A bus passed on the highway, distant, lonely. You could still leave, Ethan said quietly. Take the drive, find your contact. Start over. She turned to face him. And what about you? I'll keep them away from you. She stepped closer, her voice low but firm. You still don't get it, do you? You're not just protecting me anymore. We're in this together. Something in Ethan's face shifted. The wall he'd built over years of loss started to crack. He looked at her, seeing not just a woman on the run, but someone who had lost, fought, and kept standing. Why me? He asked quietly. You could have trusted anyone else. Rachel smiled faintly. Because you didn't treat me like someone broken. He swallowed hard, the words catching in his throat. You're not broken. Neither are you, she whispered. For a while they sat in silence again. Not awkward but calm. Ethan eventually stood, walked outside for air. The night was cool. The smell of wet asphalt and gasoline hung in the breeze. He stared at the sky, wide, dark, endless, and thought of Lily asleep at home. He whispered under his breath, I'm doing this for you, kiddo. Rachel joined him at the doorway, arms folded against the chill. You miss her. Every second. You're a good dad, Ethan. He shook his head. I don't know about that. I do, she said softly. Good dads don't run toward danger unless they're protecting something worth it. He turned to her. What happens when this is over? You get your truth out. And then what? Rachel's gaze drifted to the dark highway. Then I finally stop running. Maybe I find a place where no one knows my name. Ethan nodded slowly. Sounds nice. You could do the same, she said. Start fresh. Somewhere quiet. He gave a half smile. I've tried quiet. It doesn't stick. She laughed softly, shaking her head. You don't make things easy, do you? Never have. The next morning, the motel was wrapped in fog. Rachel packed the laptop and what was left of the drive. Ethan loaded the truck in silence. As they pulled onto the road, Rachel checked her phone. A message from Daniel blinked on the screen. Got your files. Publishing tonight. Be ready. Her breath caught. It's happening. Ethan glanced at her. That's good news, right? It should be, she said. But when people like that get exposed, they don't go quietly. He nodded, gripping the wheel. Then we stay ready. Hours later, they stopped at a gas station just outside the city. Ethan stepped out to fill the tank. Rachel went inside for coffee. When she came back, she noticed something off. A black SUV parked across the street, engine running. Her heart dropped. Ethan, she said, voice tight, they found us again. He followed her gaze. Get in the truck. They drove off, but the SUV followed. For 10 long minutes, neither spoke. The highway stretched empty, the tension growing with every mile. Finally, Ethan said, If this goes bad, you take Lily and disappear. You hear me? Rachel's jaw set. I'm not leaving you. Rachel. No, her voice broke slightly. You don't get to tell me to run. Not after everything. He met her eyes, saw the fire there, and stopped arguing. They drove in silence, headlights cutting through fog and fear. The phone buzzed in Rachel's hand. Another text from Daniel. They know. Get out now. Ethan cursed under his breath, turning off the main road and heading for the woods outside town. The SUV followed, closer now. He killed the lights, swerving down a dirt path until the truck finally stopped near an old field. The SUV's headlights vanished behind them. For a moment, all was quiet again. Then Rachel whispered, "We can't keep running forever." Ethan looked at her, exhausted, determined, alive. "No," he said quietly, "but we can finish this on our terms." For a few moments, they stood under the open sky, just two people who'd lost everything, standing side by side against the dark. No words, just the sound of crickets and wind in the trees. And in that silence, something changed. The fear didn't go away, it just stopped leading. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing love anyway. Morning broke over the small town like a sigh of relief. For the first time in days, the air didn't feel heavy. It smelled like rain, earth, and hope. Ethan stood on his porch, a mug of coffee in his hand. The sky was soft gray, the kind that promised a quiet day ahead. Behind him, Lily's laughter floated from the kitchen. Light, easy, whole. Rachel was helping her make pancakes, her hair loose for once, her sleeves rolled up. Ethan watched through the window and smiled. He hadn't seen his daughter that happy since before everything went wrong. 3 days had passed since Daniel's article went live. Headlines flooded every major news outlet. Corporate corruption exposed. Whistleblower brings billion-dollar fraud to light. Rachel's name wasn't mentioned, but she didn't need it to be. Justice was finally out there. The men who'd hunted her had been arrested. The company's CEO was facing charges. And for the first time in years, Rachel could breathe without looking over her shoulder. Inside, Lily dropped a pancake on the floor. "Oops." Rachel laughed, helping her pick it up. "That one's for the dog." Lily giggled. "But we don't have a dog." Ethan walked in just then, taking a sip from his mug. "Guess that means I get it," he said, pretending to grab the pancake with exaggerated hunger. Lily squealed, running away. Rachel shook her head. "You're such a dad." He smiled. "That's the idea." For a moment, it was just that. Laughter, sunlight, a sense of normal that felt brand new. After breakfast, Rachel joined him on the porch. The road stretched quiet, the fields beyond still damp from the rain. "Feels strange," she said. "Being still." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, feels good though." She smiled faintly. "I almost forgot what good feels like." He glanced at her. "So what happens next for you?" Rachel looked out at the fields. "I'll have to talk to the feds, maybe testify. Then, I don't know. I might stay here for a while, if that's okay." Ethan's voice was steady, soft. "It's more than okay." That evening, they drove into town for groceries. Main Street was alive again. Families out walking, music from the diner's jukebox spilling onto the sidewalk. People nodded at Ethan as he passed. "Heard what you did?" one man said, tipping his hat. "You kept us safe." Ethan just smiled and kept walking. He didn't like being called a hero. Heroes were people who didn't make mistakes. He was just a father who did what he had to do. Rachel walked beside him, quiet but content. Lily held both their hands, swinging her arms with every step. They stopped at the little park near the courthouse, watching kids chase each other through the grass. Rachel leaned closer. "You ever think about leaving this place?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Every winter. But somehow we're still here. Maybe you're meant to be." "Maybe," he said. "Maybe you are too." Later that night, the house was quiet again. Lily was asleep upstairs, her stuffed bear tucked under her arm. Ethan sat on the couch, staring at the fading fire in the hearth. Rachel came in with 2 cups of tea and handed him one. "Long day," she said. "Yeah, but a good one." She sat beside him. "You did more than protect me, Ethan. You gave me back my life." He looked at her, eyes tired but kind. "You did the hard part. You told the truth." Rachel smiled. "We both did in our own ways." For a while, neither spoke. The fire popped softly, painting the room in gold light. Ethan finally broke the silence. You ever think about starting over? Not running, just starting fresh. Rachel tilted her head. With what? He gave a small, shy shrug. Maybe with people who understand what it's like to lose and still choose to care anyway. Her smile was gentle. Are you asking me to stay? He met her eyes. I'm asking if you want to. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the dark fields. The night you found me, she said, I didn't think anyone could care enough to help. Not after what I'd done. Not after what I'd lost. But you did. She turned back to him, her voice trembling slightly. And maybe that's enough of a reason to stop running. Ethan stood too, stepping closer. Then stay. Rachel's eyes filled with quiet relief. Okay. Outside, the wind picked up, soft, steady, alive. The kind that carried the smell of pine and fresh earth. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real. And for both of them, that was more than enough. A few weeks later, spring rolled in. The farm buzzed with life again. Lily chasing butterflies, Ethan fixing fences, Rachel tending to the small vegetable patch she'd started near the porch. Neighbors came by to drop off pie, news, and gratitude. Ethan found himself smiling more, laughing more. The lines on his face began to soften. Sometimes, late in the evening, he'd catch Rachel looking at him from across the field. The same quiet strength in her eyes, but lighter now. She'd wave and he'd wave back. No words needed. One Sunday morning, the three of them drove into town for the farmer's market. The smell of coffee and baked bread filled the air. A local band played on the corner. Lily tugged on Ethan's hand. Can we get ice cream? He laughed. Before lunch. Rachel grinned. Let her. It's Sunday. They bought 2 cones, 1 strawberry, 1 chocolate, and sat on a bench under the oak tree near the courthouse. For once, there were no secrets, no shadows, no running. Just sunshine and peace. Rachel turned to Ethan. You ever think about how weird life is? How something terrible can lead to something good? Ethan smiled. Yeah, like how a stranger at a fair turned my whole life around. She looked at him, eyes soft. You mean the day your daughter saved me? He chuckled. Yeah, guess she's the real hero. Guess she is. They sat there for a moment, quiet, grateful, whole. As the band played a slow tune nearby, Ethan looked out at the street. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what could go wrong. He was thinking about what was right here. Lily's laughter, Rachel's peace, the promise of ordinary days that felt like miracles. He reached for Rachel's hand. She didn't pull away. And under that big American sky, filled with sunlight and the sound of Sunday music, everything finally felt right. If this story touched you, if you've ever lost hope and found it again through kindness, you already know what matters most. Stick around. Stories like this remind us that love always finds its way home. Do you believe some people are worth the wait? Drop a heart in the comments if this story hit you. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.